Good evening and welcome to our talk today. The drive towards enabling an inclusive, balanced and equal workforce is a force to be reckoned with. Over the past decade, workspaces have been taking steps to increase the diversity, inclusivity and equity quotient, but in most sectors, the effort as well as the progress seems cosmetic. At all levels within society, programs are directed towards the inclusion of people. But is this more about visible diversity? Is it about showing that we care? Or is it about taking strategic steps towards systematic change? The Diverse series, a collaboration between Ladies Who Lead and Dextrous, seeks to answer these questions and provide solutions by talking to experts. Intelligently designed co-working spaces in Mumbai, Dextrous strives to offer a diverse, aware and more inclusive environment, understanding that this has a huge impact on well-being and as well as performance. As we can see, this beautiful space that we are in is their Lower Parel office. Ladies Who Lead aims at building an ecosystem that leverages the expertise of women leaders in their sphere of influence and creates a dynamic community that empowers, enables and encourages. Today, we discuss what it would take to make these changes at the workplace with Harish Iyer, an equal rights activist and diversity, equity and inclusion head at Axis Bank. Harish is the only Indian national listed in the World Pride Power list of the 100 most influential LGBT people in the world, and was one of the implementers in the historic Section 377 case. Welcome, Harish. We're so happy to have you here today with us.
My pleasure, Anisha.
So let's start by first actually unboxing what the concept of inclusivity, diversity, and equity actually means. They're interchangeable concepts, but we can't replace them in today's workspace.
I think what's important is that is to recognize that they're not interchangeable. The fact that diversity is basically about hiring, it's about how distinctive everyone is. Inclusion is about creating an enabling environment within the organization, and equity is ensuring that you provide access to everybody. What I mean by that is you can't just complain that we don't have persons with disability in our workplaces. Do you have ramps? Okay, you can't complain that you don't have trans. Oh, you know, we are very inclusive of trans people, but where will do you have bathrooms? Okay, have you educated everyone in your organization about the fact that there could be trans people who could be joining the workforce? So I think diversity, equity, and inclusion are three different and distinct things, and we shouldn't be putting all of it in assuming that one word is the synonym of another.
But equality has now become equity because they need to have a stake in making decisions as well. Is there a lag in between actually hiring people from diverse backgrounds and ticking the boxes and actually giving them the power to make decision-making processes?
There is. I mean, we don't live in a more equal world. We don't live in a more equitable world. And I firmly believe, Anisha, that to address an issue, you need to undress the issue. And it's important to look at it nakedly and look at the issue and see that, the women labor force participation is below Saudi Arabia.
Which is shocking.
You look at so many other parameters. You have the Gallup study, which was done in the US, which basically states that around 16% of any population could be from the LGBTQ community. There is no study done in India. Okay, so the truth is that there is still a lot that needs to be done. Just by saying that you're inclusive, just by saying that that you respect diverse people coming in, it will not make the change. If you have to make the change, you have to be intentional, and you have to take steps towards it. You have to take steps in educating people within your organization. You need to be intentional and create products for people who belong to diverse groups externally. So it has to be a business decision, it has to be an HR decision, it has to be a rounded decision.
But then how do you distinguish between an organization that's doing it as a tokenism and one that actually believes and is driving policy changes towards it?
You can tell the difference. As a person who is from the LGBT community,
okay.
I know for sure that when Every time it's June, which is not the Indian
Pride
Pride Month,
Month, yes.
it's the American Pride Month. And it's the Indian Pride Month
Do
should
we
be
have an
September.
Indian Pride Month?
It should be September
Because of
because
377.
September is when we got, September 6th is when we got the, got Section 377 decriminalized, read down rather. So it should be September, but and I mean the month is of not of any significance, but the intention. You have suddenly everyone turning rainbows and you go inside their offices. Can a trans person just walk into your office without being questioned? And I know of many places where trans people can't just walk in to an office. You can't walk in with your partner. You will not have policies within your organization. So externally to project, it looks all very fancy, but we are not
All
a thing.
rainbows.
We are not a thing. I mean, you can't just think of women on March 8th and think of LGBT people on in the month of June and on September 6th and forget them. I'm gay all 365 days of the year. I'm not just gay in the month of June or on September 6th.
No, it makes a big impact as well. But when we're talking about, like you said, there are very few organizations where a transgender person can walk in. So when we're talking about that, do we need to make changes and policy changes at an infrastructure level as well as provide psychologically safe spaces for people to feel comfortable coming in? For instance, women who come back post-baby, there are postnatal programs, there are creches, but there are very few organizations that actually factor in a lactating mother or provide a room for her. I'm sure there's the same thing with transgender women or even queer women. How do you address something as basic as the infrastructure?
I think infrastructure, I would divide it in two kinds of infrastructure. One is, of course, the physical infrastructure of providing a room for people or providing a restroom for people. Not just women, even for men. If you go to many international, I remember when I was in France at the airport. I was at the airport in Paris, and I actually saw that in the men's restroom there was a diaper changing this thing. I said, why do you assume that the diaper is going to be changed only by the woman?
Yes.
Why can't it be a man who's changing the diaper of the child, right? So I think it is deeply rooted in our assumptions, not just about women but also about men. Why do you think that men can't be kind and men can't be changing diapers? And I think what's more needed, more than the physical infrastructure, is the mental infrastructure in ensuring that people are trained to digest differences, to understand that everyone is not the same, that everyone could think differently, could behave differently, could talk differently, and we all are distinct beings. So I think mental infrastructure becomes very important.
So how do you start educating the workforce on that? What are the first couple of steps that need to be taken at a base level?
I think first is, Anisha, to acknowledge that bias is universal. There's absolutely no one in the world who doesn't have a bias. And in Access, we have something called as the Pause for Bias sessions, where we pause and we reflect, and we don't act on our reflexes. We reflect. And I think it's important to look at our biases on a timely basis. We keep upgrading the curriculum every month. We tend to speak to people. We don't speak at people. We don't have these numbers that we need to finish and get more and more people enrolled in, but also ensuring that it actually reaches the last mile. So I think it's important to have these sensitization lectures, but also make it intentional. To have, I think the biggest sensitization that any organization can have is the human capital that they have. So when you have real people coming out and speaking about their experiences, whether it's about mothers coming and speaking about their experiences, trans men speaking about their experiences, LGBT, gay people coming and speaking about their experiences. People learn from people. People don't learn from policies. So even when we conduct these sessions, we use a lot of our personal anecdotes and our personal life stories. We bring our whole selves to these examples that we narrate, and that's how it makes it possible. Because we are in a nation where we all have got scolded. I'm sure that you also got scolded because your neighbor scored 20 marks more than what you did. So right. So we are all in this Pados Ka Pintu syndrome, where we all want to score Pados Ki Pintu ya Pados Ki Sheila syndrome, where we all want to score better than what our neighbors did. So we all learn from examples of other people, and I think that the biggest examples that we can offer is human capital by itself. So get human beings to speak about their examples, their own life journeys, and through that we will be able to see more change.
But even talking about personal anecdotes and bringing your full self in, how do you express yourself at work, in a workspace?
So I'm gender fluid,
yes.
And I go with the pronouns he or she, and which is something that you could discover your gender at any point of your life. It is very recent. In fact, it took a 18-year-old someone called Ria. I was chatting with her, and that's when I discovered that, I also feel this way. And I always probably knew that I was gender fluid, but you require the eureka moment, and I didn't have a word for it.
Right.
And language is an evolving phenomena like culture, and I found a word for it, and I said, eureka, I think I fit in there. And otherwise I've lived practically all my life as a gay man, and I like men, and I've been candid about it. So I think language becomes so important in your policies, in your practices. I think, and language is evolving. So how do you keep upgrading your policies with language? Like, for instance, previously we used to have the word maternity leave. Now we use the word birthing parents, because there are men, trans men pre-operative trans men who can have children too. So things like this, it's an evolving phenomena, and I think we need to keep evolving.
Yeah, for sure. And as it changes, I think the definitions changes. You get more ideas and concepts. The more we evolve, the more we open up this scenario, it definitely makes a big change. We had a recent study done where Tata scored, they had 52 companies ranked in terms of equality in the workspace. Tata Steel ranked among things. So they have policies in place as well. What do you think of their policies, and is this the way in the right direction? It's definitely a step there, but how much more do we have to bridge?
I think it's important for all organizations to stand up and stand the test of time. Tata Steel has done.
Yes.
I know of a few people. I know of Anubhuti from Tata Steel, who is a trans person and who's very open and very candid about it. I think it's important to have a rounded view when it comes to policies and practices, and you don't focus on the niches, but focus on the absolutes also. Focus on women, focus on LGBTQ people, and don't wait for the sun to rise for you to start your work. I mean, we would have had decriminalization 20 years later if we believed that everyone needs to be educated for that.
Yeah.
The good time to start being inclusive and to start changing your policies is yesterday. So that's what I always believe, and you don't have to wait for the fourth day after Purnima or Amavasya to start it.
No, for sure. But when we were talking about earlier, when you said women, yes, it's great, but we also need to focus on more minor, or more not minor, but more dedicated segments of queer women. You said it was easier to achieve 100% in that. Can you tell me more about that?
Like, for instance, considering the prejudice, I think it's far more difficult for a lot of queer people. I mean, you see exceptions in workforces where you see some people coming out and speaking about it, but the truth is that we are not just the people who are visible to you. There are a lot of invisible people who happen to be from the LGBT community, at least from the visible lot. It's so easy to actually say that, every organization might have 10 people, 50 people, or 100 people who are out and about their sexuality. It's so easy to actually focus on those niches and ensure that they have a wonderful experience and they become the ambassadors. So it looks like a huge task when you look at 25% of women or 30% of women in the organization. This tends to be a smaller number per se, But that doesn't mean that you should not be focusing on
The women
on
as
the
well.
others as well.
Of
I mean,
course.
you need to focus on all aspects together, but this becomes more visible. Focus on the niches, but also focus on the larger numbers.
And the larger numbers drive the niches. It's vice versa. Once you get the anecdotes and the praise for that, you want to do more as well.
I think we need to come to a phase, come to a time when we don't look at people as diversity, but like for instance, we don't look at women as diversity, but we look at diversity in women. I think we need to come to that phase because women are not a monolith. Women are not just one type of woman. I mean, you could be a trans woman, you could be a lesbian woman, you could be a gender non-conforming woman, you could be a non-binary woman. So there's so many kinds of women. Same with men. Same with people from the LGBTQ. Gender non-binary woman नहीं होता, gender non-binary होता है. but I think it's important to focus on all aspects, and now we need to start looking at diversity in
Women.
or rather than people as diversity.
But then diversity in men as well. Why
Diversity,
don't
because men are not a monolith. Trans men are men, so and their lived experiences are not the same as cis men, and it's important to acknowledge that. Unless and until we acknowledge that and get those people to speak about their own life experiences and stand, because they know their lives better
Of course.
than what anyone else would. So yeah.
Well, let's go back to the women aspect. We have women in, I'm talking about the monolith women now. We have women in all spheres of the workforce, but largely when it comes from middle management to top management, there is a lack of support. There may be policies, but the implementation or lack of support comes in there. What can be done to bridge that gap as well? And what do you feel from your on-ground experience?
I think one is be incredibly intentional about the fact. Look at the facts and acknowledge the fact that there are lesser number of women. And in fact, when you climb the ranks, every time you climb one ladder, you'll see lesser number of women.
Because I think that's the same time that also have a lot of life changes. They're growing their family, whatever it is. They have diverse opinions as well on that.
I tend to. I mean, I can't speak for a woman, but I can definitely, with my experience of what I have spoken to women, I think that it's also important to understand that women are beyond their life stage changes. You could have women who get pregnant and they take a maternity, people who get pregnant and they take maternity leaves, but they might have the responsibility of looking after the child. But many a times it's the assumption that people make that women have no ambition,
Especially after getting married.
After getting married, her ambition is to ensure that you have, and I find it very insulting to men, because it looks like men don't care at all and men shouldn't be caring at all. So it is, so that becomes very challenging, because I find it I mean, if men are saying those things, men should get offended every time they say something.
But it's usually
like
men who are asking these questions to
so
women
that is
when
what,
they
that
come
is
for
the
an
whole,
interview.
That is the whole
oh,
thing.
you've got married. What is the 5-year plan? Why don't men get these questions? You're married. How are you going to continue working?
Yeah, because you think they associate the biological process of bearing the child with the fact that that's the responsibility of only the woman. I mean, it's important that men also, in fact, men should fight for this, saying that, hey, why should, I mean, you know what, I also need to take a break. I would love to have, if I was a heterosexual man, I would have loved to take a break from my career and look after my child, if at all I had a child, and because I love being a house husband, so I would have loved doing that.
Of course.
Even now I'm looking for a guy, nothing has changed. I mean, I'm looking for a guy who can go out and work and I can stay at home and look after the dogs and cats.
Why not? If that's what gives you happiness, why not?
Yeah. So I think it's important, Anisha, to understand that women are not baby making machines, and women are not defined only by their life stage changes. There is much more. Women have ambition, and it's important to fuel their ambition, to ensure that that women don't start. Women stay in motion. In Axis Bank, we have this. We have a series. In fact, I was just taking a session. We have a series called Women in Motion.
Okay.
Access Women in Motion, where we basically go to different colleges and we just speak to women and men, because I think men also need to know about it, and we tell them that, you know what, it's okay to take a break, but come back, get counted as an economic entity, because what you do at your workspace also means what you're doing and what is your position largely in society as well, because you take your own purchase decisions, you ensure that you are not at the mercy of somebody. So I think it's important to take that decision. Of course, if a woman voluntarily wants to be a homemaker, that's also something that we need to acknowledge. But it's important for women to stay in motion.
That's a brilliant idea, which I think more workplaces need to implement something like that it has an impact on the. Also, women who go back to work post maternity, they have a huge impact on how their children are raised, and seeing a working mother as well. It teaches the future generation as well.
Yeah, and so does when they see a father doing the dishes.
Course.
I mean, I think
Both
parents
ways.
should. It's another thing. Sorry, mom. I mean, if you're watching this, I don't do my dishes. It's easy to preach, but yeah, I should start doing that very soon.
Very soon. Yes. But let's go back to Section 377. It's been a couple of years. What has changed and what still needs to be done?
It's been 3 years now, and I think that things have changed a lot, but there's still a lot that needs to be done. We have just it's a metamorphosis, you know. It's the beginning, as Barkha Dutt beautifully put it once when she was with NDTV. It's the beginning of the end of prejudice against LGBT people in India. So it's the beginning of the end. It's not the end, you know. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, and also it's important to acknowledge that when love comes out of the closet, hate comes out of the closet too.
As well.
So it's not that in countries like America and Canada where you can get married, and Germany where you can get married, there's no homophobia. There is homophobia, there is queer phobia, even in those places. Just that you need to be aware, and organizations especially need to open their minds and their hearts and their policies and their practices for the LGBTQ community. Make a start somewhere. I know that you will fail sometimes, you will falter sometimes, you will also receive a lot of criticism, but make that start, make the August beginning at any point that you think. I mean, make that August beginning. We'll learn by the way.
So where do they start? What is step one?
The first point would be to change your policies and practices. Internally, employees be more welcoming to LGBTQ people. Put it out there in black and white. Don't let people assume. Say that intentionally, that women, LGBTQ people, PWD persons, everyone is welcome to join the bank, join whichever workplace they represent. In fact, we should eventually even go further and go to even more marginalized sections and ensure that more and more people join in. But make a beginning right now. Ensure that you have, once people come in, the onus of inclusion lies on those who are included, not on those who are excluded. So ensure that as a member of the majoritarian groups, you ensure that anyone who happens to be lesser, whose representation needs to be is lesser in number, they feel comfortable expressing themselves, because everyone thrives when the most marginalized people in the group, the most ostracized people in the group find a voice. Everyone finds a voice, and the business will also thrive. We will be a case and study very soon. In the next 2 or 3 years, you will see us booming, just because we have a diversity, equity and inclusion in place.
I like the fact that you said that the onus of inclusion lies with those who are included. So the first step is education then.
First step is awareness and education. Then is infrastructure, mental and physical.
physical.
And once you do that, then go to market. Go and get your customers also acquainted. Understand, because what inclusion you're doing over here, your business also needs to reflect the same. You can't be close-minded and not have exclusively things mentioned for your customers when you are doing it for your internal customers who are your employees.
So with a bank like Axis Bank, how much of the percentage of business or loans are diverted towards making sure that everyone is included when it comes to in business loans for women or transgender women or even LGBT community? How much of that is actually in place? And even in terms of suppliers and vendors, if you need change, it needs to come at all levels.
So one of the things that we have put in place is we have a human rights policy, which is very clear that on our supplier front and on our on those fronts, it's pretty clear that we will that they need to there are some rules that they need to adhere to, and we will not bear any kind of discrimination in those parameters. When it comes to we recently launched a Come As You Are policy of policy and practices. So internally for our customers, internally for our employees, we have all sets of rules, languages. Language has been changed, upgraded. Externally, savings account. We have just made the beginning. We have opened savings. We have been intentional in telling people that you can come, if there's a same-sex couple, you can come and open a bank account with us. You can open a savings account. You can come with your partner and open an account. No questions asked. Also you can list your partner as a nominee in your savings account or your term deposits. You can add MX as a title if you happen to be a person who's gender non-binary, gender fluid, or if you're a trans person who wants to use that title. So we have made provision for this. We have made the beginning, and with time we will get more products. I will not be able to give you a percentage, because that also means letting out. At the moment, we have just begun the journey on the 6th of September, so it's too early to give you numbers of that kind, but we'll always be a small number. We should not be gauging with percentage, because the number of LGBT people who are out is not that huge a number, though we are a huge number, but that's not a huge number of people who are out and about it. So it's not about the numbers, but it's about the intent.
It's about the policy.
It's about the intent and the intentionality that we put over there.
Yeah, it starts with the policies.
It starts with the policies, it starts with the practices, it starts with behavior. Change the behavior of the way you operate, the way you think, and keep challenging yourself. Come As You Are will not be valid 2 years down the line if we don't innovate, if we don't keep pace with what's happening in the world.
But tell me more about this Come As You Are.
So Come As You Are, so as I said, there are the 3 things that you can do. Open joint accounts, and so we've had some very good experiences. We've had people opening accounts, going personally and opening accounts, and I had a friend of mine, Ajay, who went and opened an account, and he put it very happily that I've opened this account, and finally I could walk inside a bank and actually say that it's my partner and it's not a Mrs. but it's a Mr. And these are small things. It is these small joys that you can bring to people's lives, and it makes perfect business sense also. I don't think it needs to be divorced from business. Social good doesn't need to be divorced from business. In fact, it should be a business strategy.
They should be aligned always. Yeah. But are there any such experiences that you have encountered which has given you moments of joy that there has been progressive change being made?
I think one of the very important things that I've experienced is we all go straitjacketed because banking is considered to be a boring kind of a thing where you wear blacks and maroons and walk
Navy
inside.
blues.
Navy blues.
Navy blues.
So I went, but I did make a little bit of change over there. I went wearing a pink suit.
Suit.
And
this is first day at work.
Sorry?
This is your first day at work.
It was my first week at work.
Okay.
So I went and the head of HR, Raj Kamal, who's my boss's boss, so she called me to the room and she was livid, okay, and she looked at me, why are you dressed like this? Why are you behaving? Why are you dressed like this? And I was like, why is she so animated? And I thought, did I spill anything in my coat? And I thought I looked quite sexy in a pink. I couldn't be more gay than wearing something pink. You know, some stereotypes are true. I really love pink. So I think normal is also a stereotype. So I subscribe to that stereotype as well. So I went and she was livid, and I asked her why you're like this, and then she looked at me and she said, Harish, we didn't hire you to fit in. You're different, and we acknowledge that you're different. Stand out. And
that coming from a banking sector is
and she was
amazing.
the head HR,
Right.
and of course I couldn't. I could stand out, but it is not true for everyone else in the bank. So we changed the dress code policy. We upgraded it, where everyone could dress the way they want, and then of course I did come out and speak about it.
But Harish, do you think this was made because you were at a level of making an impact and making a change? Whereas it would be somebody who was probably just starting at a much junior level. Would it have had the same impact? Again,
I think, Anisha, it's important to have queer people in decisive positions, but also important to have all people in all positions. Yes. Queer people don't exist in the forefronts or the margins. They exist everywhere. And but yes, it did help doing that.
Right.
But I joined Axis Bank because we had same-sex partner benefits. I could add my boyfriend's name, non-existent boyfriend's name, in the list of
future planning.
Yeah, future planning. I could just add him to the list for Mediclaim benefits. I joined. So there were some people. It was a bank which already thought of something like that. Even the Come As You Are policy, I give it a name and a structure maybe, because I'm from the community. You don't need to have those people to actually enact those things. Of course, you need to decide, go to market, discuss with the target audience. Otherwise,
but that's for every policy.
That's for every policy. But you don't need to wait
separate.
for a group, for a Harish to come to start something. Even if I was not there, they would have come up with something. I'm sure about it.
Yeah, but I'm sure if they already had such progressive thoughts and they had policies.
Intention,
intention, like you're saying, is the greatest factor here.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. Do you have anything else that we can discuss before we take questions from the audience? If anyone has questions, please start tagging them in. We'll take questions in about 5 to 10 minutes. Do we have questions? Yeah, one second.
Okay. As you mentioned, there can also be many kinds of personalities, and our generations aren't trained to see them so fluidly. Awareness is happening, but we have miles to go. What are some of the ways we can train ourselves to be inclusive in the way we react, act and react. React, act and interact. Oh my God, that was a tongue twister. So, you'd like to answer that? Okay.
Go ahead.
So I think we'll never be ready. Okay. So if we are waiting for the right time to be ready, we'll never be ready, and we'll always have miles to go. Because society is a changing phenomena, so we'll always have miles to go. It's important to make the beginning, make the August beginning, even if you're beginning in March.
I think what you said is the intention has to be there first.
Yeah.
Let's start with getting the intention in place, and then everything else will just follow.
Yeah, yeah.
We know education and learning starts from home, but what if home itself is a place you need to fight for being fair and accept people as they are? What do you think are the ways we can help the next generation?
I think, my mother used to use this word which was almost like a shlok for me. She used to say, home is a place to which a bruised and battered individual returns after doing battle with the world. So your battles sometimes, and when home becomes a battlefield, it is challenging. But we need to constantly acknowledge that our battles are not just at our workplaces, our battles are at home, and our battles are everywhere. One thing is to be financially and emotionally independent, seek therapy on a regular basis. My therapist's name is Aarti. I have dysthymia, and it's important to acknowledge these things and to remove remove the shame out of therapy, and we all are fighting a battle. I mean, it's not that people from a certain class or a certain caste or a certain religion are not fighting the battle. We all are fighting the battle, and it's important to recognize and to seek therapy whenever we can, and to seek help whenever we can. And the ways that we can help the next generation is to be more aware. Don't pass on your bigotry to the next generation. If you're not aware, if you learnt that, bring up your children. I mean, first thing, when you have children, first of all, adopt cats or dogs. They need homes, adopt. Okay, and if you have children, again adopt. But if you have children, then ensure that that those children are brought up. Children decide what their gender is and what their sexuality is. You don't thrust a gender or a sexuality on them just because you are so.
But I think also there is a change that at least I've noticed in the older generation as well. They're inquiring. There is an intention to understand. They will question you, okay, so what does this definition mean? Have you come across stuff like that as well?
Well, yes. I mean, there are many people, like my neighbors are always inquisitive. I remember my neighbor asking my mother, oh, your son is good and son is this thing. I said, why don't you get him married? And my mother said, yeah, we are just looking for a boy to get him married. So yes, so sometimes it does happen, and they did understand over a period of time that that what sexuality is, and it's not interchangeable. It's not something that I can wake up and change. People do understand, but it requires a great deal of patience. And always remember, the onus of inclusion lies on those who are included, not on those who are excluded. So yeah, so people who are excluded, you don't need to work hard to get included. The ones who are included need to work hard to include more diverse people, because it helps them too.
Of course. Should we take the next one?
Half of LGBTQ women hear sexist comments or joke about their gender while at work. How to avoid this? I think first, when you hush an issue, you rush in homophobia. So don't hush these issues. If there's a challenge, address the issue then and there. Speak about, be intentional in speaking about. I don't even know if people understand the difference between sex and gender. I don't know if people understand the difference between sex, sexuality and gender as well. So I think it's important. Education is the most important thing, and it's important to look at education in a more rounded way. And it doesn't, I find it much easier, Anisha, to speak to school children than to speak in workplaces, because school children come from a more unbiased kind of an approach. But when it comes to
Paresh, like you're talking, maybe this should be a part of your school curriculum. When you introduce sex education to the children, you should also have a talk about this. They need to be aware.
Yeah, I mean, sex, sexuality,
everything,
rounded education.
Because that's the time where they're most confused.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, even people who are going to watch this on YouTube, and I don't know if they. And it's important that if you are watching this right now, please Google up what is sex, what is gender, what is sexuality. Educate yourself, because the next generation is going to be ruthless. They are not going to deal with your ignorance the way the previous generation did.
And they shouldn't
and
have
they shouldn't
to. They shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to at all.
Okay, so isn't religion playing an important role in shielding people from becoming more accepting, inclusive of LGBTQ? I think the basis of every religion should be rooted on acceptance and empathy and science, right? And if somebody believes otherwise, then I would believe that religion is not a religion. And I mean this across religions. I am not picking up one religion, whether I'm not going to take the names of religions, then it will become this thing. I'm referring to major religions, who are majority religions and minority religions. Across religions, religion cannot propagate bigotry, religion cannot propagate inequality. The purpose of religion should be to stand up for everybody, irrespective of what numbers are, and to stand up for science. And science says that LGBTQ people are valid, their lives are valid. LGBTQ people exist in all strata of society, they exist everywhere. So it's just time that religion catches up. In addition to the inclusion of LGBTQ community, India has evils of caste to deal with. Harish, what great examples have you seen in your corporate exposure where companies have been successful in dealing with phobias that result from these biases? I need to first acknowledge, Anisha, that I myself was biased, and I didn't realize to be caste blind is not a matter of pride. I was brought up, I belong to I come from a family which practices Brahmanism,
Okay.
and I had cultures, but I was caste blind. I didn't know, I didn't see I didn't feel discrimination, so I thought that there's no discrimination, you know. But I put up an ad, a matrimonial ad on, and I thought it was okay to joke and to say something like caste no bar but Iyer preferred, and I thought that, hey, it was just a funny take. I was just being typical of all other advertisements. It doesn't really matter to me. It really didn't matter to me at that time, but when people started reacting, it took me some time to digest, to reflect, and to understand that it's not okay. It's not my lived experience. It's not okay for me to joke about these things, to say these things, because for some people, they've been ostracized and excluded for ages together. So I think when it comes to the corporate space also, people have just started. I know of, I read some articles in America where people were discriminated on the basis of their caste, and it made huge headlines. But I think corporates should also start focusing on that. Have we started doing that, whether it's Dalit Bahujan, Adivasi people, or whether it's people from other backgrounds that we have started focusing on, whether we are focusing on religion? Not at the moment, because it's something that we all need to start doing. If you'd ask me if the needle has moved already on that, I don't think in the Indian diaspora the needle has moved, but it needs to. It needs to look at that aspect too.
Yeah, that's an important one. How do you feel every time you were let down or saw bias in front of you? How did you overcome such incidents, and what gave you the strength?
I think if your own personal journey cannot inspire you, nothing else will. I think my inspiration doesn't lie in Mother Teresa or somebody else, or it should be Ellen DeGeneres for me.
Yeah.
But my inspiration lies in my mirror. I look at my life on what I have fought, and to live your life truly and unabashedly is the truest form of activism. And I practice self-activism every day. I stand in front of the mirror, and I feel proud, not to a point of pride that engulfs me, but pride that actually dissolves me and makes me more believable and more real, and that makes it easier for me.
And the strength comes from that as well, okay.
Yeah.
As you are implementing more policies, you must have encountered employees who found it difficult to accept the LGBT community. How did you deal with getting them to accept and make the change?
Very few though. I would not say, because what exists in the outside world exists within Axis and within the world. So we are not divorced from the society that we live in. I would not say that I have not encountered people who don't understand what LGBTQ people are, but I speak to them. I speak to them when they, you might be biased to whatever level, but when you have somebody in flesh and blood coming and telling you about it, when you encounter, because you have this notion about an LGBTQ person, or you have a notion about a banker, you have a notion about so many things. It's important to break that. Yeah. And when you see a person in flesh and blood sitting and chatting with you, then you don't give heed to all those biases that exist.
But do they come up? Do you face a bit of resistance when policies are implemented? I
didn't in this organization. In fact, I should tell you, we had a board meeting. The number of times in my board meeting and in my discussions I've spoken about penis and vagina and what is transgender and LGBTQ, and from a scientific basis, not from pornographic basis, is this thing. And people are generally, at least in my organization, people are very open-minded from top to bottom. I think right from the management committee, where the CEO and other people sit, I've had conversations with them. In fact, even when we had to come out with the Come As You Are policy, we placed it amongst them, and they all unanimously decided that it's an idea that time has come, and we will learn with time, but we are not going to waste another moment delaying providing services to people or being intentional about it just because there could be some belief somewhere that that tomorrow is a better day,
Yes.
today is not the day.
Today is the day. Thank you so much, Harish. That was our last question. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
It's an absolute
Anisha.
pleasure. Thank you.